welcome to King Arthur and Lady of the Lake. We're here today to continue our conversation that we had last week around double standards. Today we're going to be talking about body shaming, body image, and what that looks like for men and for women, and the differences that we believe are there that not necessarily are. What do you think about that, Michael?
I'm looking forward to it. And let's not forget our special guests today as well, Helen's earrings.
Look, I aim to please, right? You might as well have all of me.
And you do, and you do. I'd like to make a personal request, and I'd like the personal request to be, could you wear, please, a different pair of earrings every week?
I'll get onto my earring lady.
All right, good. I'll look forward.
This is a friend I know who makes artisan feather earrings, so I'll have a chat with her. Yeah,
it's like two massive dream catchers that you're wearing on your ears there, Helen. I love it.
Yeah,
very interesting.
Wild. This is the wild woman.
So I want to be clear. I'm not body shaming you. I'm not shaming you. I know that's the topic of today. That's not shaming. That is me paying you a compliment, paying the earrings a compliment. They're impressive.
This is the interesting thing. Thank you. I will take your compliment and let it land without passing it off and pretending that it doesn't make me feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. Or going the opposite and going, how dare you make a point of my earrings? How dare you do that? I'm offended now.
It's so funny. This is body image and I suppose self-image. Like, this is really who I am. It looks like me. These earrings look like me, right?
Yeah, well, like your hair, long, and there's brown in those feathers as well. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely.
Lioness. So tell me, what's your experience from the masculine around body image? What do you think the expectation is?
I think the expectation is different for the expectation around men from a man's perspective of what he thinks a woman wants.
Whatever you think it looks like, whether it's pressure from men or pressure from women.
So I think there's probably a bit of both. So I think just from a man's perspective, out there in society, you don't usually see on the cover of Men's Health, for instance, you don't usually see a guy with a beer gut, right? Or man boobs. You usually see on the front of Men's Health, and in fact, in most representations in media, you see the guy with the perfectly groomed beard. If he's got a beard, you see his hair is beautiful, like Prince Charming beautiful. And he's also usually got abs and a well-defined physique. And so that's the image that's being portrayed out there the majority of the time. And men look at that, and a lot of men I know, and I know I have in the past too, felt very inadequate about not having this 8-pack and the shoulders and the arms and all the rest of it. And especially when we see in movies, and we look at that movie Magic Mike that came out a few years ago, right? And I think that's a really good example, because those guys, and when we put this into perspective, right, those guys, all of them had a personal trainer and a nutritionist for 6 to 12 months prior to even filming. And then when they film, before that, they do all these exercises and stuff to pump up their muscles and make them look even bigger than they are. And so we look at this in reality, and then we look at all the women who just swarm to the cinemas to see these guys dance in this movie, and they leave their husbands or their partners at home, and they say, I'm going to go watch Magic Mike. And the guys know that the women are catching up in a group to go to the movies together to watch these good-looking actors with the perfect male physique, according to them, dance around seductively. And those women are going to giggle, and they're going to whatever they're going to do, right? And I wonder how that makes men feel. And I know that it makes men feel very inadequate. It's like, then she's going to come home to me, and I wonder how she's going to feel. And so I think that's part of it.
Do you think this is a new thing? Because for me, I look at like growing up in the 70s, you had Dukes of Hazzard and like Dolly Parton and all of the like Benny Hill. I mean, that was just kind of like normal viewing, right? And there was always, all the game shows had women looking really kind of ditzy, holding something and leaning on a car, and so that was normal. And it was in our lounge rooms at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Do you
Yeah.
think it's a new thing for it to kind of flip the other way, where there's this concentration on men's physique now?
I think is it a new thing? Uh, I'm not sure that it's a new thing. I think it's a lot more pronounced now than what it was before. And I
Mm,
think men are showing more of their bodies now than what they did maybe in the 70s, even into the 80s. I could be wrong because I was only a kid at the time, so I didn't really pay attention. But when I look back on TV shows and when you look back on stuff that was filmed in the 80s, whether it's video clips or movies, um, or whatever it might be, you didn't see a lot of men taking their shirts off like you do these
right.
days,
Mm,
right? You didn't see a lot of that. Whereas um, with women, you probably saw more of it back then, but it wasn't as, the bikinis weren't as brief as they are now.
mm,
And you didn't see women walking around in a movie on a beach in G-strings. You'd see them in a one piece in the 70s and 80s, right?
mm.
So it was a bit
I don't
different.
know about that. What about Baywatch? I mean, there was David Hasselhoff, like straight out of Knight Rider, never
Yep.
taken any clothes off at all in Knight Rider. And there
Yeah,
he
good
was on,
point.
on the beach,
Yep.
and he took his gear off. He wasn't a fabulous physique. I mean, he was slim and nice looking, but he wasn't anything particularly great. But the women on Baywatch were like, I mean, even if it wasn't one piece, the leg kind of came up to just about their armpit.
Right.
And it was like, and so, and there was always this core Baywatch, and it was like a hit series.
Mm.
So there's been this consistent kind of, that's our ideal woman. And as well, this aging man with the 25-year-old model type person on his arm, that was a sign of status, like,
Yep. Yep.
and all of the kind of connotations that go along with that. It's been very different for a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it has. And I think it's evolved over time as well. And like in the 70s and 80s, yeah, you're right. Things like Baywatch, for instance, where David Hasselhoff, but you look back on that, he didn't have that ripped muscular physique, right? Which we see now in men. And like it's almost like it feels like it's this expectation because women don't make a secret of the fact that when there's a guy out there on the beach, in the movies, on the magazine cover, whatever, they're drawn to that physique. And there's a real primal instinctual reason why that is the case, right? Because when we look at, psychologically speaking, what women look for in men, women look for in men a man that is strong, that can, I'm talking about from a primal instinctual level, right? A real psychological, deep psychological reptilian brain level. It's like, I need to find someone who can look after me, who can take care of shit, who can club the saber-toothed tiger over the head if it comes jumping at me. And our psychology is almost wired that the guy with the big muscles and the abs and the lean physique is somehow more able to do that than your average Joe.
Mm,
And so I think that's why, from a psychological point of view, women are attracted more to that kind of physique in men. And for men, in terms of the attraction to women, it's like, again, when we look at the reptilian brain and the real primal instinctual thing, it's like it's about childbearing, and it's about sensuality as well, and attractiveness. And that's why it's about hips and legs and bum, and the boobs are more of like, can she breastfeed,
mm,
right? Has she got enough there to breastfeed? And that's a real thing that harks back to millennia ago. I
mm.
think it's different now in terms of how many men look at those parts of a woman, but I think from an instinctual reptilian brain aspect, that's where we go.
I'd like to take that even deeper, actually, in the fact that, do you think that we are trained who to find attractive? Because I really feel that we are so media driven, and I notice this double standard so much now, where I have, like I just spoke about, I've noticed this flip, that
Mm,
I grew up with the kind of glorification of women laying on cars as if they had no brain but a body. And And there was always that thing about, the blonde bimbo, that if she's attractive, she must be really stupid.
But
And
having
somebody who
having said that, you never see a half naked woman lying across a Camry, right? It's always on nice cars, so that says something.
Oh, stop. Stop. Oh my God. I can almost hear the keyboards.
I know.
You know,
Bring forth the keyboard
honestly,
warriors.
I really feel like as things have changed now, there's been the surgence of, like, that's not okay, and we are more than we need to be glorified. That needs to stop. But on the other hand as well, as advertising has become so much more risque, much more popular,
Yep.
obviously now it's being flipped the other way. There's like, let's put a guy on this cover and let's do the same to the guy we used to do to the man. And I'm seeing that very, very present now, and I see the double standard of that for sure. But
Yeah, and that also,
I also believe we're told who to fancy.
I agree with
So
that.
we found Marilyn Monroe gorgeous and attractive in the 50s and 60s, and then all of a sudden Twiggy came along, and everybody kind of switched from Marilyn Monroe, this is kind of voluptuous woman who was a size 16, back to kind of Twiggy, who was a size 8, no boobs, no hips, just this kind of little girl looking type person. And then as things have gone on, we've got the supermodels, and men have had in their mind, oh, that's what is attractive. It's almost like a status symbol, that's what's seen as attractive now, therefore I find that attractive.
Mm,
And so there's this kind of 5'10" to 6 foot tall women, who are literally hired as a coat hanger type of body, that anything they put on a look, and I don't mean that insulting, I mean that it just, that anything they put on works on them, because their body type is
mm,
that, it's to
mm,
display the clothing.
mm,
And then of course, as the sexuality has changed between the men and women, the man has started coming on the runway, and they're a lot more chiseled, and so therefore women are like, oh, that, because the sex symbols of the 40s and 50s and 60s, your Dean Martins and your Frank Sinatras, they weren't cut.
no,
You know,
no,
they weren't ripped.
no,
you
they
know
weren't. Sean Connery.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
My dad used to have a thing for Sophia Loren. And you look back at Sophia Loren back in the 40s and
I
50s,
love
whenever
her.
she, yeah, it's like elegant, sophisticated, right? Um, and there was a bit of an edge to her as well,
Mm,
but there was more elegance and sophistication. And these days, it's like arguably what men are told to find attractive now is that real slutty kind of uh, woman or girl that seeks validation,
mm,
right?
mm,
That's the type. Whereas years ago, it was about the strong woman who was elegant, sophisticated, and had a sense of herself. And like she wasn't going to allow just any man into her space. That's the Sophia Loren, right?
mm,
And that's I think that's more attractive than what we're seeing now,
mm,
personally. And Sophia Loren wasn't the size 8, that we see out there these days.
mm,
Very different, more like the 12 to 14,
mm.
which I
And
think is
sorry, Michael.
no, that's okay. Which I think is more indicative of the average woman, you
Mm,
know, because like you see men with these chiseled abs and physique and all the rest of it, right? It's when you look at your guy living a normal life, right, married or with in a relationship with kids and etc. Like we don't have 3 hours a day to spend in the gym and timing our meals, right? Like the way that you have to, because I've done that before. Before my 3-year-old daughter was born, my wife and I would go to the gym religiously every day. We'd time our eating. Like my physique was that physique you see on the front of Men's Health. It's not anymore, right? But it used to be, and that was only 3-4 years ago. And it takes a lot of work, a lot of energy, and a lot of maintenance to get that and to keep it, and it's unrealistic. And so this is the same with women and men. What we see out there in media is an unrealistic representation of how we should look,
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah.
because these people spend their lives looking like that. They're told when to go to bed. They're told when to wake up, how much sleep they have to have because of recovery. They're told what to the gram the chicken breast that they've got to have at 10 a.m. in the morning with this little tiny bit of weighed brown rice or sweet potato or whatever, and a bit of broccolini, and you have to have that at 10 o'clock, and then immediately half an hour later you got to have a glass of water, and this is how many ounces. And it's like, who the hell would live their life like that?
Mm.
And is that what we have to, is that the standard?
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, I really feel that this is a really interesting subject, because a lot of women constantly on diets, a lot of women constantly body shamed for being overweight.
Yep.
I mean, personally, when I put weight on, I don't feel good. And I don't know whether it's because I don't feel good because I'm worried about what that makes me look like as my appearance, or whether it's just me not being comfortable with that. I have this real kind of battle about where is that coming from, this kind of unhappiness around my appearance or my weight, and whether that is it mine or is it societal? And that's the question I ask myself. And I know that there's an expectation for me to look a certain way. But I suppose where the double standard is on that is that I now believe that there is that for men as well, that there's an expectation that men need to look a certain way. But yet, when you're with someone, when we're talking about that Sophia Loren and Frank Sinatra, it's so interesting how it plays into all of the other topics that we've spoken about, because the very first subject we took on was chivalry.
Yep.
And the thing that was beautifully attractive and amazing about these men in the 50s and 60s and 40s was their chivalry, the way they would treat you, the way that they were able to hold you in the feminine. And what's amazing about women like Sophia Loren and Marilyn Monroe is they held their sexuality. They were all women, and they didn't need to be any more than that. Yet they were powerful. But men weren't afraid of their power. They revered it. And so there was this really nice balance in that way. Not kind of minimizing that underneath that in our society there was an unbalance between the genders, an imbalance. But yeah, it's interesting to watch the attractiveness of a person, I would say 50 or so years ago, was in how you would be treated or how it would make you feel.
Yep.
Versus whether your esteem and your ego was given a kick by the person on your arm.
Yep. And so I wonder if I were to speak into that a little bit more deeply around just us, right? And how we're talking about body image, shaming, all that sort of stuff. I wonder if I was to come on here and record one of these discussions with you with just a hoodie on, right? And you were to come on and not have done your hair and put your makeup on and your earrings. I love the earrings, I really do, et cetera, right? I wonder how if people would look at that and they would look and they'd listen for, 5 or 10 seconds, and then they'd turn off subconsciously and they'd stop listening to us because we weren't presenting ourselves in a way that was deemed socially acceptable in this environment when we're putting ourselves out on public display. So I wonder whether we've been indoctrinated to that point and conditioned to that point in society that you and I could not do this unless we looked like we were reasonably well presented. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, we have these, what fascinates me, the movements of like, look, I'm taking a selfie with no makeup on. Like, it's courage, brave to actually be seen.
Yep.
And I mean, I know I grew up after a certain age. I never went out without makeup on. I was absolutely terrified of doing it. My esteem was so low with my actual appearance. And I remember saying to somebody, as I get older, I just want to be courageous in who I am and how I look. And and he said to me, your first book needs to be called The Day I Stopped Wearing Makeup. Well, that's really interesting that it's seen as courageous. It's seen as though you've actually fallen into yourself and you've accepted yourself fully as you are on the planet, to then be seen without any makeup or without doing your hair, etc. And the thing is that the jury is out as to whether people actually do turn off you or not. It's seen as, it's met with kind of like, good for you, and you go for it, and wow, and you're still beautiful. But I don't know. I mean, you can see this all over on like really all over TV,
Yeah.
Everybody is a certain way. Like Carl, I don't know whether you're watching this in Australia, but there's a show called Today in Australia, and there's the two hosts, Carl and Lisa. Lisa wears a different outfit every day, and social media and all the rest of it, they comment on her clothing every day, sometimes kindly, sometimes unkindly. Carl, without anybody knowing, wore the same suit every day for 12 months. Never mentioned
Oh,
it.
this is on morning breakfast
Yeah.
talk show. That show. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then after the 12 months, he actually came on and said, "Do you guys know that I've worn the same suit every single day for 12 months and nobody's noticed?"
Can I tell you something about? Can I tell you something about that guy?
Mm,
So if you look at his political views, and if you have a look at how he represents himself and the environment he works in, and the life that he has, etc., etc., I don't know if you've noticed, but he is one of these real far left, um, feminist loving sort of guys. Okay, so for him, and he came out on an interview and talked about this, and he said, "Well, no man stands up for women's rights." And it's like, oh, okay, cool. So that's why you did it. Mm.
yeah. But I
But
mean, I still
I
appreciate.
get your point. I get your point, though, right? I get
Yeah,
your point.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've got no problem with a man standing up for women's rights. I've got no problem with that at all. And I just think it was amazing that nobody even on the set knew that he was doing it.
Mm,
That's how
mm,
oblivious people were to what he was wearing. Whereas all of these people would have been gathering around Lisa, dressing her every morning.
yep.
Nobody even noticed. Nobody even paid attention. What are you wearing today, Carl? You know what I mean?
Yep.
That exists, right? So that's really interesting to see that we're not paying that much attention, but yet, and he is popular for his personality, like for
Do you
being.
think he cared? Do you think he cared about himself and people paying attention to what men wear? Do you think he actually cared, or do you think he just wanted to make a statement?
But I don't care whether he cared. Like, I'm not really bothered about that. It
Yep.
does not interest me why he did it, or I just find it interesting that at the end of the 12 months, nobody had noticed.
Mm. And it had to be pointed out to people.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the
and yet
real point, isn't it?
you see somebody, like a movie star or whatever, they wear a dress 2 years later, and the New Idea or whatever will find the photo where they wore that dress today and put
Yeah.
it on headline news. This was the dress
Can you
recycled from
believe?
2017. She's going
Exactly.
thrifty. I'm like,
Exactly. She must be struggling. She hasn't,
yeah,
and then when you connect all these dots, right? She hasn't done any movies for 18 months. And where is she going? And she's got all this debt. And
yeah,
maybe this is why she couldn't get, nobody wanted to give her a
yeah,
dress.
yeah.
When you were talking before about women making a statement about not wearing makeup and that it's such a big deal,
Mm,
I couldn't remember her name. She's a singer. So while you were talking, I Googled it quickly, and it's Alicia Keys.
yeah.
So Alicia Keys did this, and I remember an interview that she did around this as well. So she went one day, she said, "I'm sick of, the makeup, the hair, the whatever. And here's a photo of me just with nothing on. This is me at home at 10 o'clock in the morning, nothing, right?" And it went viral and crazy, right? Everyone, congratulations, good on you, well done. And it's like, I walk out of the house like with no makeup on every day,
Yeah.
right? Why is that not a big deal? Why, if I take and every selfie I take, even the studio shots that I've done for branding, I haven't worn any makeup, right? There's no expectation for men, except when you're on TV for lighting and whatever, to have any makeup on. But there's this expectation for women.
Mm,
And but she did an interview, and this is where I want to get to with this. She did an interview, and they said, "Why did you do that? You know, massive kudos to you, but why did you do that now?" And she said, "Well, I couldn't have done it 5 years ago." And they said, "Why couldn't you have done it 5 years ago?" "Because nobody would have looked at me twice, and I would not have made it, and I wouldn't have gotten a record deal, and nobody would have picked me up because underneath all the stuff, I'm just an ordinary girl." And and I don't look any different to anyone else in the supermarket, right? This is what she said. And she said people would just walk by, and she said then one day I turned up to an interview, a studio, a thing or whatever, and she said I had my makeup professionally done, and she said funnily enough that's when I got my record contract.
mm, mm. Yeah,
Prior to that, it was very difficult. Nobody was, regardless of my music, my talent, my whatever, nobody would give me a go. So
that's
it's
right.
very, very interesting, right? Not only does no one pay attention, as you said, to what men do, but people pay attention to what women do. And
Mm,
somehow it made Alicia Keys more relevant, more talented. Let's be
yeah,
honest, right?
mm,
Because she still played the piano just as well on the Monday and sang just as well on the Monday
mm.
and had exactly the same song on the Monday as on the Tuesday when she had makeup.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the talent was no different. The only difference was the makeup and the hair.
And you know, back in Elizabethan times, it was men who wore the makeup.
Yes. Yeah,
Mm,
right. What's with that? Oh, you see that in
yeah,
movies and stuff too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So all kind of the Mozart period, it was actually men who wore makeup. And I wonder where that actually swapped in history. That's going to be really interesting to look at
Mm.
actually.
I've
But there was
I've
a
never really.
definite change in history where women didn't wear makeup, it was the men.
Yep.
And so there was a definite change in that. But yeah, I
And I
think
wonder if
that
that's a status thing. I wonder if that was a status thing because you probably didn't see the villagers, the village men wearing
that's
makeup.
right.
It was more so the nobility and the royalty.
Mm,
That's what you see in the movies anyway. Whether that's the case, whether that was the case in real life or not, who
mm.
knows? But
Yeah,
yeah.
so interesting, interesting. So I think there's constantly then when looking at that these kind of changes in our kind of culture that one minute it's kind of the focus is on women and then it might be on men and maybe this is that kind of the changing of the times it alters with time because now I know there's a lot more young boys who are wearing makeup on Instagram and they wear a lot more makeup and
Mm,
the photo shoots makeup's a lot more and men's skincare has started coming out as a real brand
yep.
so it's and I don't think this is the first time in history it's ever been done. It's almost like the concentration is flipping back and it swings and roundabouts. Maybe it is just that that's how it goes.
But I do think going back to not that we've really strayed too far from the topic, but going back to the topic of body shaming around men, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it's isolated just to men. I
Mm,
think it's. I think it's both men and women, and I think
mm,
the representations of, how a man should look and how a woman should look, has been conditioned and indoctrinated in our society. And so, when you when we just prepare ourselves for the day or for certain things, there's an expectation. And
mm.
when we see somebody at the supermarket or down the shops with their pajamas on, there's judgment, isn't there?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
their UGG boots or whatever. um, and even if we go a little bit deeper than that, it's not unusual to see women out with no makeup on, and I'm not sure that men judge them for that
Mm,
out there in normal society. I don't,
mm,
right? But in the media and on social media and in every other one of these platforms, we do judge people. And whether it's consciously or unconsciously, we judge people just like you and I would be judged. If all of a sudden next week, which maybe we should do, I should turn up in a ripped hoodie and you could turn up in whatever, and we do our thing, right?
yeah, yeah,
But I wonder if we had have done our first episode like that, if anyone would have bothered listening or watching to
yeah,
any of the others
yeah.
from an unconscious, societal, indoctrinated conditioning point of view.
Mm. So does it speak into success then? Is it that they look a certain way, they are successful?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Because
Mm,
we're being told that this is what success looks like.
yeah.
Success looks like things. It looks like money. It looks like um, houses, cars, clothes, hair, how you present yourself. Like that's what society tells us is successful. And
Mm,
you just got to see what all of the the PR people out there. It's like if you want to be relevant, you got to look good. Simple as
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I've had um, somebody that or maybe you can call them stylists or whatever, PR people or whatever, and they've said, Michael, you need to change your hair, your glasses, your beard, your clothes, and I'm like, what? Why do I need to change all this? What's wrong with me the way that I am? And it's
Mm,
like, well, if you want more people to listen to you, and if you want to get your message out there more, you have to look this way. And it's like, well, that's not really me, is it?
mm,
And so, you know what they wanted me to do? They wanted me to dye some, especially the grey, right? The grey on the side and the grey in the beard. They wanted me to dye most of it. They said you should have 70% black and about 30% grey. that's the ideal for people to go, oh, he's still young enough, he's relatable, but he's got that bit of gray, so that gives him some wisdom as well. And she said to me, you don't want to look like you're too old. And it was like, at that point, I'll tell you what I did, Helen. You know what I did? I said, thank you so much for your time. That's at the end of our conversation. See you later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so what's happening there then really is we're answering the question in that the between the genders, the body shaming goes both ways.
It
And
really does.
maybe back in the day, it really didn't. Maybe it was a lot more about, slim, skinny, gorgeous women, and men could kind of just show up and be all charming and we were just lucky to have their attention. That's what it really felt like for me.
Yep.
But now I really think where women will say now, it's all right for men, they don't have to worry about it. And actually, you
We
do.
still do. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do.
And
Yep.
I'm noticing this more and more and more, that there's this kind of like, oh my God, I'm insecure from men that I talk to. I'm insecure. I don't know whether I look, how am I going to get a new girlfriend after I leave this marriage? How am I going to date? I don't look
Mm.
like that anymore. I've aged. I've not dated for 30 years and look at me now. There's this real pressure to be or look. And the gyms are full of people who've just separated.
That's right.
You need to
Yes,
look
because I have to look
better
a certain way in order to attract
than them.
somebody.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here we are on the opposite side of that, a bunch of women going, oh my God, I have to do the same to attract a man. And so it's really interesting that we're kind of trying to be what we think the opposite person needs, and they're in turn kind of trying to do the same to attract us.
Mm.
And we really, what do you think that men are looking for? What do you think in general a man wants from a woman?
Well, I think different men want different things, right? And it depends on what man you're talking with and at what level of awareness he's at, and what he wants for life. There are some men out there that still want the good little housewife who will look after the house and the kids and be there with dinner on the table and
Mm,
slippers on at the couch and etc. etc. There's still men out there that want that. There are also men who want the opposite of that. There are men who want the real independent woman who's going to go out there and forge her path and don't disturb me in my thing and you go do your thing, right? And we'll live parallel but separate lives,
yeah.
right? That's the extreme. There's those two extremes. I think what I'm seeing more in a trend now is somewhere in the middle that men are trying to feel comfortable with as well, and that women are trying to feel comfortable with. And that is, I think men want a woman who is empowered and strong, who knows how to be powerfully in her feminine and understanding the strength in that as well. See, I'm not indicative of your ordinary man because I've done all this other work as well. And I coach relationships and men too. So, but what I am seeing is I'm seeing men more and more want the opposite of the, not quite the opposite, but leaning more towards the extreme than the 50s housewife.
Mm,
That real, yeah, you know what I mean? And I think they want more independence, they want more, but they still want a woman who looks after herself, but there's an expectation on us to look after ourselves as well,
mm,
right?
mm.
So I think that's a big question. What if I were to ask you the same thing? Would it be an easy response? Do you think
Yeah.
it's not? Is it?
I actually feel that women are looking for a level of chivalry. I do think that there is that. I think there's a almost, and a lot of people won't even say it out loud because they feel it goes against women's movement, but it
Yep.
doesn't at all. It
No, it
doesn't at
doesn't.
all. It allows each person to blossom into their own gender, really.
Yep.
It
Yep.
doesn't, if I want somebody to kind of treat me with gallantry, say, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden my brain goes to mush and I'm not a powerful woman.
Yep. And you can't open the car door on your
That's
own,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said for actually having an admiration for each other and revering the strengths that the other person brings. And I definitely think that more so now than ever, women are looking for a particular looking man. I've noticed that a lot more, that women are a lot more into what a guy looks like. They're less forgiving than they used to be. And
Mm.
I think it's almost because there's this kind of indoctrination now from media of how a guy's supposed to look. But a lot of my friends are just in really beautiful whole relationships where they have a really deep intimacy, and so really I think that's what people are looking for, women are looking for deep intimacy.
Mm.
So, you know, whatever
And
that
I
looks
think you'll
like.
find, I think you'll find as we become more disconnected as a society with what's happening in the world, I think people are going to seek more connection,
Mm,
and that will mean that I think we'll start to hope. I hope this is going to be the case, Helen. I hope we start to look beyond the superficial and we
mm,
start to look more deeply within the person and the
mm,
quality of the person and the willingness of that person to look at themselves as well and grow, and a
mm,
lot more forgiveness around allowing people to just express their humanity, you know,
mm,
and their humanness without judgment.
mm,
Knowing that that person has the best of intentions to learn from that experience and grow as a result of it. And I
mm,
think that is true connection. And so,
mm,
if I were to answer your question more fully, I think men are probably looking for women who want to be connected to them
mm,
and remain connected, you
mm,
know, instead of do this, which men and women seem to do in relationships. They do this, oh, yes, I love you, but no, today I don't like you. I
mm,
love you, but today I don't like you because you didn't do that, and you're not that person for me today.
mm, mm,
Yeah.
mm. I want to throw in a subject here that I think we should talk about is, why do nice guys come last? Because I have a heap of men say this to me.
Yep.
And I've had a guy actually contact me from overseas and say, I am a really nice guy, and yet I constantly see women that I like, who are lovely women, going out
Mm,
with men covered in tattoos who are the bad boy, who are going to treat them terribly. And I want to know why that is. So I think
mm,
that'd be a really, really good
that's a
conversation to have,
yeah. Let's do it.
because that as well speaks into that, you know, kind of, um, when we do become what we think the other person wants, and then you still don't get the guy, or you still don't get
Mm,
the girl. Like, what is going on in the kind of the shadow of what we're looking for in a relationship?
yeah, awesome. All right. Well, that'll be in a few weeks because I've got a couple of other episodes planned. What have we got planned for next time? What
I
did we say
think
we were going to do?
we were talking about, I thought I was listening.
Oh, yes.
Real relationship question when
Yes,
everybody's
yes,
going like,
yes.
I did listen. Oh my God.
Yep. Haven't you heard me all of these years?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to be a good discussion.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good one. All right, cool. So good talk again, Helen.
Good talk.
Around, and I think the conclusion to that is that both men and women are subject to the same societal conditioning and indoctrination around body image and body shaming. And when we go a little bit deeper into that, it's like we all have the same challenge. So perhaps we could be a little bit more forgiving of each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Look for who
cool.
they are.
Yep.
All right, Michael. Well, we'll see you next week.
Thank you for watching, everyone. And if you have any thoughts, of course, we always encourage you to comment, like, and subscribe. We're laughing because we've had a joke on social media about this just over the last few days.
I've
So,
been reprimanded for not telling people to subscribe and like.
well, it's all about algorithms, isn't it?
So do me a favor, people. Please like and subscribe.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you, Helen's earrings.
No problem. See you, Michael.
Bye, Helen.